Hello, lovely people. Um, where do I even begin? You'll obviously be able to tell that this is not our usual setup. I feel like I've got a lot to fill you in on since the last time I uploaded, which I think was about a month ago. Um, but there's been a lot of change around here, and here is not even where I was this time last month. So anyway, it's nice to be back. I feel like it's been a little while since I did a podcast update, and unfortunately, I think this one might be quite brief. I don't know, we'll see how long I ramble on for. But I don't have a huge amount to update you on, um, purely because I've had such a busy life for the last 6 weeks that I really haven't had a lot of time to be knitting. So, I'm going to cover what I have done. I'm getting back into things now. Luckily, it's all settled down, and I'll have a lot more time over the next couple of weeks to make some new progress and hopefully start a couple of new fun projects. But I'll chat about those later anyway. I have relocated, so I'm no longer in Belfast. I have a new job, and I'm actually not at my new job yet because I have 2 weeks before I start. So I'm currently at my parents' house where I'm living for about 3 weeks, and then I'll be relocating to Bristol, which is very exciting. Not somewhere I know anything about apart from the fact that I managed to get a job there. Um, so I think it's just all been very up in the air for the last while, and obviously, as anyone who's done a long distance move will know, I mean averagely long distance, not like international or anything, but you know, there is a bit of sea in between Belfast and North Wales where I am now. And so that was obviously quite an effort to pack up my whole flat and my life and my car and take everything home. But it's all here now, which is great, along with all my knitting stuff. And I think nothing has been damaged in the process. I was really worried about the Swift because the Swift has sustained an injury in the past, which I did patch up with paper mache, but then, when things are being moved and packed and all of that. Anyway, I think it's still in one piece. We're going to hope that it functions because I really don't want to have to buy a new Swift, and it's just such a handy piece of equipment to own. But yeah, the rest of my knitting and all my craft stuff made it safely here, so it will definitely make it down to Bristol with me in a fortnight when I move, and hopefully wherever I end up, I don't even know where I'll be living yet, but that's a problem for another day. So yeah, there's a lot of change, and I think it's been such a busy time logistically, just trying to organize everything and get my whole house packed, that the crafts have definitely taken a back burner for the last few weeks. And although now I'm settled here, I'm slowly getting back into things. So it's going to get more exciting as the summer carries on, we hope. So this is going to be quite a quick roundup because I don't think I can chat a lot about what I have. And I think most of these projects you will have seen before, or I've talked about them, with acquisitions before. So there's nothing massively new, but I don't know. It's just a little update, diary update for the middle of the year to check in and let you know where I'm at. So I'm going to start with all of my finished objects, and then we're going to do a little roundup of works in progress, although I think they are all works in progress that I had on the go in the last podcast episode. And then I do have one new acquisition to talk about, which is exciting, but it's a very small one. It's very fun, but it's very small. So first off, and this was definitely one of my absolute favourite finished objects from the last couple of months. This is my Charlie top, my self-drafted Charlie top. Oh, I realised I'm sat quite close to the camera here, so I don't think you're going to be able to see, but hopefully I can put in some B-roll of me trying this on so that you get a better idea of what it looks like, because I don't think it comes across that well whenever it's in front of my face. This is a self-drafted pattern, and this is something that I made to wear to the Charlie XCX concert that I went to the week before last in Belfast, which actually I didn't wear it, and it was for the best. I did come up with something better, but I have actually worn this far more even before the concert and since, that I'm quite glad of it because it's not so much a Charlie XX top anymore, but that was the intention when it was started, and I'm still very pleased with how it turned out. It was the quickest thing I've ever worked up. So basically, this is just a raglan top construction in 2 strands of mohair on 8mm needles. And I really guessed with how many stitches to cast on for the neckline. I guessed with the whole thing. I just estimated and I tried it on along the way and it just ended up fitting nicely. But it just has these little short sleeves. And then there are slight increases around the bust or the sort of midpoint where I split for the sleeves and the body. And so it does have a slight A-line shape to the rest of it. I had put a tie in the middle eyelets originally. I don't know if you can see here, it's not very clear. But it has this these increased eyelets running through the middle, which I hope you can see there. And what I had really wanted to do was do a little bow tie kind of threaded through them, but it just didn't quite work out the way I wanted. And to be honest, I think it's really nice and cool and kind of floaty, even without it. So I'm not too fussed, but that was just a nice idea for a while. And this was all worked up in scrap mohair. I did buy, I think I bought I probably did buy just the same amount that I ended up using in the finished project because I felt like I needed a couple of extra colours to be able to kind of properly balance out all the colours that I had in my stash. So I think I bought the yellow and the teal and then one of the other colours, can't remember which. I think it might have been the light blue, to kind of make the colour palette come together a bit better. But then in saying that, it didn't really make a dent in the mohair that I actually had in my stash because it turns out that you just don't need very much. Like the meterage is nothing. And so I think with what I acquired, it might have cancelled itself out. But at least now I have a nice wide colour selection of all the mohair, which is still in my stash. And I think there's actually a bit of brushed alpaca silk in there as well. But to be honest, you can't really tell. The brushed alpaca silk, I only held 1 strand because it is slightly heavier weight than the mohair. But yeah, so safe to say I can't really call it a stash busting project because no stash was busted in the making of this project. So it's very much just a fun piece to own. And it was a really nice experiment in kind of working something up organically and changing colour randomly. And I did put in some like stitch changes. Maybe there were a couple of rows of garter stitch or the yarn overs for the eyelets and things like that, which just kind of switched it up a little bit and were a lot of fun. And so I think I'm going to try and do more similar things to this in the future. I don't know what yet. I quite fancy like a maxi skirt. I think that might be good. What you'd wear under it, I have no idea. But maybe I could do one to go with because I think I probably have enough yarn, to be honest. This used barely anything. Let me see if I can find out how many meters it was in the end. And bear in mind, yeah, so only 880 meters in total, and 98% of that was held double, so it's only really about 450 tops that was used in the whole top. And I would fully recommend to anyone who hasn't ever self-drafted or improvised a pattern. It's very cathartic. I enjoyed it a lot, and I think I'll be doing it more in the future. And this is just a nice summery sort of blouse, which was kind of missing from my wardrobe because I don't really own anything similar. Although that being said, I did wear it to the Spinning Yarns Yarn Festival on one of the hottest days of the year, and it was quite warm. Luckily, it's past the point now where it's shedding fluff every time I move because it was doing that for a good while. And I think that's just the way with anything that's 100% mohair is it does take quite a few wears for the shedding to kind of calm down. But it's worth it in the end. You don't have to, be inhaling fibers forever. So yeah, that was a big success. And that was sort of the first finished object the last 2 months, I think. Now, the second one I definitely showed off whenever it was a whip. But this is the Lulu Slipover Chunky by Petite Knit, which was made as a gift for my mum. Again, I'm going to have to put in a photo because I realised this frame is not very forgiving in giving you the full picture of what the pieces look like. But this was actually remarkably quick to work up once I actually got a move on and sat down and focused on it. And so this was finished definitely in the wrong season. I mean, who is wearing an Aran weight alpaca wool slipover in the summer? Well, in the British summer, I mean, there are definitely weeks, but we've been having some unseasonably warm weather, so there hasn't really been an opportunity yet. But this was a gift from my mum. I have already given it to her. I just stole it back to show off in this podcast episode, and it'll be returned to her post haste. But I did make a few alterations to the pattern, and honestly, the pattern was just a great learning experience because I don't really make a lot of petite knit. I tend to gravitate towards petite knit whenever I have to do something as a gift for somebody because I feel like all of her designs are kind of overwhelmingly inoffensive, and you can usually find something to suit everybody's taste because everything is so classic and simple, I suppose. And so I generally suggest it for whenever I'm doing gift knits for other people, especially if they're choosing whatever they would like to own, because I also know that the sizing is reliable, and if I've made somebody something in a petite knit size previously, I know that whatever I make is going to fit them in the new garment, And yeah, generally just solid, reliable, inoffensive, and actually this one was executed remarkably well on my part, I thought. I'm going to start with the modifications that I made, which were not very much, but I did change the neckline from the original because it does have a kind of rolled polo neck, and I don't know, there's something about polo neck and sleeveless which just seemed counterproductive to me, because if you're going for warmth, you're not going to want to wear a sleeveless jumper, do you know? I think maybe the only time it would work is if you were wearing something maybe to put under a coat where you didn't have space in the sleeves for jumper sleeves. But anyway, Mum had requested a crew neck, so I just changed it to a rolled crew neck. And I think all of the ribbing should technically be 1x1, but I did in twisted rib. And I actually really liked the finish. I thought it turned out really smart. There is a bit of variation that you can see kind of on the rolled hem, which kind of, it just comes with the territory, I think. But I definitely don't mind it. And then the rolled twisted rib neckline was actually looking remarkably tidy. Although, to be honest, I should have preempted the fact that often with polo neck garments, the neckline on the body is a lot closer because obviously the neck is more fitted. So in changing this to a crew neck, I probably should have found a way to widen the neckline on the body pieces a little bit. But to be honest, I was way past that before I even realised that it was going to be an issue. And fortunately, I sort of cast it off with a sewn down bind off, which gave it enough stretch that it doesn't really make a difference. It just sits quite high on the neck, I suppose. But hey, it still looks quite good, so I don't really mind. I will say that I felt like I learnt a lot of new, very useful techniques in this pattern, which is something that I haven't really experienced for a while. I think because I haven't really been pushing myself to do projects that have unique design features in them. But the way, oh, it's hard to talk about this without giving away the pattern. Obviously, always buy the pattern if you're interested in finding something new. But I will say that the way the side plackets were worked on this in particular was very interesting because it was a technique that I hadn't really considered before. And so fundamentally, obviously, the body is worked flat on the front and the back, and then you pick up along the side to work the double knitted button plackets. And the way that it was done was just very unusual to me and is definitely a technique that I think I'll probably try and implement in the future in some way. I think it would be very helpful for double knitted button bands on cardigans and things because it's great in that it sort of does away with the need for getting your tension difference on the stockinette and the double knitted button placket right on the first try. And the only ever cardigan that I have made in the past was knit with a double knitted button band at the same time. And so obviously, because your tension is going to be different in stockinette and in double knit, you have to get that right from the get-go. Otherwise, one part of the cardigan is going to be pulling or slightly longer than the other. But with picking up and knitting it later, it means that if you don't get the tension spot on, or you use the wrong needle size or whatever for the double knit compared to the stockinette, you can just rip it back and go and work the button band again, which I think in future I'll definitely be choosing to do instead of working them at the same time if I ever come across something like that again. I think I wonder if it is just a technique which is new to me, but you know, you never know until you know, do you? So I'm glad I've learnt it now, and I'll be implementing it in the future. I will say, obviously, the pattern for this was super straightforward, very easy to follow, very well written, yada yada yada. The yarn estimates were extortionate. I don't know how I thought it was going to take so much yarn. I think I bought almost 1,000 meters because that was the recommended yardage for the size that I was making. And I maybe ended up using about half. So what I really should have done is looked on people's Ravelry projects to see how much yarn they ended up with in the finished object. But I just didn't think to do that. And I'll know now in future because I think I've still got about 6 balls of this, what's it, drops Nepal? Yeah, left to use. Oh, wait, I didn't even talk about the yarn. See, I'm so frazzled and out of practice. This is all knit up in one strand of drops Nepal, which is an alpaca wool mix. And let me see if I can find the colour. Moss green is the colour. And so yeah, in the final thing, I only used 560 meters, which, to be honest, sounds about right for a slipover in terms of my experience with slipovers, especially Aran weight ones. But again, I did buy a lot more, so I think I've still got over 370 meters still to use in my stash. So I'll have to think of another project to use all that. But anyway, that's by the by. Now, the next item is sort of my last technically finished object, but it is a little fun one. And this is my fox baby hat, which was made for a friend who's having a baby, obviously. And I sort of did this because it's a really easy present to whip up, and I have made one of them before, so it's not my first time making this pattern. And this is actually a free Drops pattern from the Drops website. I think it's just called Baby Fox Hat and Mittens, maybe. I'll see if I can put a link to it in the description. But I know people are very, very torn about Drops online patterns in general, and I get it because the formatting is not the clearest and easiest to read. But because this is charted, and also because I have already made it before, I felt like it was, you know, easy to navigate rather than a pattern which is purely written. I would definitely suggest the Drops free patterns for smaller, more manageable projects. I don't know if I'd ever knit like an adult garment using one of theirs, just because, to be honest, they are quite hard to understand. Now, the recommended yarn for this was actually Drops Alpaca, but I chose to use the Fable sock yarn because I wanted something machine washable, because you know what babies are like. But this is still, I think, 85% wool and 15% polyamide sock yarn, and it means that it's super wash, so it can go in the washing machine if it need be. I'm slightly doubtful about the size. I'm not really around a lot of babies, and so I can never tell how big a baby is going to be when I look at the ages on the pattern sizing. So I think I made a size larger than the newborn size. I can't remember whatever it was. And I'm just going to hope it fits at some point in the next 2 years, because it does look quite big to me. But again, I don't really have a frame of reference to be able to tell. So we're just going to hope and pray that it actually fits the baby that it's intended for. But yeah, this was just a very nice, speedy little project whenever I had packed up the rest of my things. And, you know, it's going to go to a good home. So, and the last finished object, I can't really call a finished object, but to be honest, it's been on the go for so long, I'm going to give myself credit for it. It's this boot sock, which I finished when I was on the ferry on the way over, and it doesn't have a pair yet. The pair has just been cast on the other day and probably won't be finished for another, when did I start this? February, maybe? It probably won't be finished until Christmas. But, you know, by Christmas, I might have a pair of socks, and that'll be brilliant. But this was just a nice little handbag project to take with me when I was traveling, and it's usually what I keep in my bag, so I do tend to only focus on it whenever I'm traveling somewhere. But this is knit up in Coop Knits Soxier DK in 3 colours, which I can't remember the names of. I'm going to write them here. And it was just done on 3.5mm needles, and it's a self-drafted vanilla sock pattern, which is very similar to all of the socks that I always do. I think I do 52 stitches in the round for my DK socks. That might be wrong. I haven't written it down, mainly because to me it just doesn't exist as a project on Ravelry, so that I don't feel the pressure to finish it, which, you know, so it sort of helps. I can get a bit stressed sometimes by having things linger on my Ravelry page for too long. So anything that I know is going to take a long time, I'll just tend to not input it into Ravelry to kind of psych myself out of, worrying about it. So yes, this is one of a pair, but I can't wear it yet because it doesn't have a matching one. But hopefully by the end of 2025, it will have a matching one. And for the second sock, because I had equal quantities of each of these three colours, the second sock is going to be matching but slightly different in that I'm going to use the orange as the main colour and keep the purple for the narrow stripes and use the lime green for the medium stripes. And that's the plan. Now, we're going to do a very quick whip update because I don't really have very many new exciting whips to show you. And now that I'm more settled at home and I have more free time and I'm actually unemployed for the best of 2 weeks, so I should have all the time in the world to get a move on with these things. I am just going to do a quick summary of everything which we've still got on the go for the summer. Starting with my scrappy project of the hour, which is the Degan Mitsony sweater. And frankly, I'm not sure if there's been much more progress on this since I last showed it to you, because again, it's a jumper and it's the middle of summer, so I'm just tending not to choose to work on it. But I also know that this is a very long-term project, so I don't really feel the pressure to get anything finished anytime soon. I'm really liking the way the colours are working up so far, though, so it's all very exciting. I think I did a few calculations and I don't have enough double knit scraps to actually make the whole jumper yet, so that's why I'm not feeling too much pressure to put real rows on it, because I couldn't finish it even if I wanted to. I'm going to need to knit some other double knit things in the meantime to collect the scrap yarn to add to this. So this is going to be a very, very, very long-term project, and this is just the bag of scraps which we have on the go at the moment, which I'm going to add to gradually as I kind of acquire more double knit. But yeah. And then in terms of real genuine whips, my main one at the moment is my little self-drafted stripy cotton skirt, which I think has had quite a bit of length added to it since the last episode, and I'm really enjoying working on it still. I think I spoke a lot about this nice yarn, which is the Rico Essential DK. I'm fairly sure, not Rico Creative DK, that's different. They're very similar, anyway. And it's just still working out wonderfully. I'm sort of having this as my evening telly watching project because it's quite easy to switch off and just work through. And I would say that, again, this is one of the nicest cotton yarns I've ever worked with, and I'm definitely going to buy some more in the future if I come across it in a shop. And I now have, I think I did have to buy a couple more balls of each colour to be able to get enough to get the length that I wanted. And they have since arrived and I've got into my second ball, so I can now hopefully finish this in the next couple of weeks, and then I'll be able to wear it through the middle of the summer and into the autumn. So it's still undecided what the final length of this is going to be, but this piece that I have here is about one full ball of each colour plus a tiny little bit. So I'm thinking we might get a decent below the knee, maybe midi-ish skirt out of it, which would be the goal, I think. And hopefully now I have lots of free time to be sitting watching telly or sitting in the garden. This will get itself finished over the next couple of weeks. Now, my final whip is mainly connected to my one acquisition that I wanted to talk about today too. So I'm going to start by talking about the yarn, since that's the exciting bit. And this is the yarn of the moment. I feel like I might have to put in some photos because it isn't very obvious that this actually has some kind of glitter flecks in it. Oh, it matches my nails. How exciting. But this is my acquisition from the Gathering Stitches Yarn Festival, which was at Castle Espy in the end of May, I want to say. Maybe it was the start of June. I can't remember. And I went down for the day and went to this yarn festival with a couple of my friends and had a wonderful time. It was really lovely. There were some fantastic stalls, and the location is a wetland nature reserve. So it was stunning, and we had a wonderful time, and we got great weather, and did a lot of browsing and purchasing. But this was actually the only thing that I came away with. I think because I knew I was moving, I wasn't really in a position to build up the stash because I knew that I was only going to have to take it to a different country. So that would have been quite a lot of effort. But I did treat myself to this one skein of fingering weight sock yarn. And now I'm not making a sock with it, but it is technically a superwash sock yarn with these sparkle flecks in it. And I believe it's called, what's the shade? Blackcurrant Jam, which is very nice. And it was actually bought from a stall which is run by a local yarn store to the festival based in Ards. And the yarn is their Inspiring Yarns Golden Sparkle Sock. And Inspiring Yarns is really interesting as a project because it is run by a local yarn shop in Newton Ards, which called the Jolly Yarn Co. But they actually run a CIC, which is kind of like a charitable organisation, through which they do programs for the community around crafts and mental health and all of the benefits of group crafting. And so they also produce and hand dye a range of yarns as part of the CIC, and all of the proceeds go towards funding their programs, which is wonderful. And I'd wholly recommend, if you're based in Ireland or the UK or happen to be visiting for whatever reason, to check them out or have a look on their website because they have a really beautiful selection. And I believe they also dye to order, which is good to know if you're maybe wanting something specific or a larger quantity than anything that they have in stock. And so I did buy this from their stall at the Yarn Festival. And with it, I am making the Pure Mesh Pullover by James N. Watts, which is a brilliant pattern and very, very hard to show on camera because of the nature of the fabric. But anyway, this is the front of the body piece so far. Oh my God, I'm losing stitches. Hang on. It's okay. I brought it back. We've recovered it. So this is all that I have worked up on it so far, but it's a very, very quick knit. So I'm thinking this is probably going to be done very, very soon. And I mainly just saw this yarn and thought it would make a wonderful going out top. And I already owned this pattern and I don't know why I hadn't made it. Maybe I started something and changed my mind. I can't remember. But anyway, I thought that they would be a great combination, even though the pattern is intended for a lace weight yarn and this is fingering weight. I think it's turned out really nicely and it doesn't seem to have made much of a difference to the finished fabric. So this is very fun to work up and it has this really unusual lace stitch, as you can obviously see, which is very creative and satisfying to knit. So although this is not maybe the most appropriate for the season, I am very excited to wear it and own it because I definitely need to bulk out my going out wardrobe. I'm one of those people who going out clothes are not my thing. I mean, who am I kidding? I spend all my life knitting jumpers. Of course, going out clothes are not my thing. But who says the two can't coexist simultaneously? So I think that covers everything for today. As I said, I kind of whittled down my stash and my whip basket just for the ease of packing up my house and moving everything. So there are definitely a few bags and baskets of yarn which I have for new projects that I haven't yet had the opportunity to cast on, but hopefully there will be a bit more time in the coming weeks to get cracking on some new things and maybe finish off a couple of the long time whips that I've had on the go. So yeah, I know this was a very speedy update. I've probably rambled through everything at 8 million miles an hour. I think I'm only now just detoxing from the stress of the last few weeks. And so, yeah, it's been a very busy time, but it's all exciting. And I'm very excited to be moving to Bristol. I don't know if any of my viewers are based there, but if you are, please give me advice. Let me know knitting wise and craft wise what there is to do. I'm always interested to know about local yarn shops and especially craft groups because I realised I'm going to have to find myself a new group of people to meet up and knit with when I get there. But yeah, it's all change. It's all very exciting. I hope everyone is having a lovely summer. Let me know if there's anything exciting going on in your lives at the minute because it'll make me feel better about being a little bit disorientated and stressed and all over the place at the moment. But as always, have a wonderful week. tell me everything that's going on. I want to hear all the gossip and everything about your projects, what you're working on at the minute, what's interesting to you, what's inspiring you, actually. That's a good one. We'll do that for a change. So, yeah, if you have something to divulge, please leave a comment down below. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully, I'll see you very, very soon.